Hi, welcome to the Go Higher Frequency Astrology channel. My name is Suzanne. Today I'm going to be talking about the upcoming full moon in Aquarius happening on July the 29th. I'll be reviewing a couple of important aspects leading up to this full moon, including the election fraud speech that Trump made on the cross of obscuration. I'll be talking about Pete Hegseth's chart and how his chart is interacting with the full moon, as well as the new supreme leader of Iran's chart. And I'll give a little teaser to the upcoming eclipse, but I'll be talking about the eclipse in more in depth in a future video. As always, I put timestamps below, so feel free to skip around to the parts that interest you the most. On July the 16th, Trump held a national address claiming evidence of widespread election fraud in the 2020 elections. This address was held on the cross of obscuration, with Jupiter opposing Pluto right on the angles. He used a dramatic presentation to attract attention, obscuring the truth with a promise of declassified details that ended up not backing up his most serious allegations. He presented this speech at an auspicious time, the night before what has been called the Barboats basket perfected. That night, the Mercury Retrograde lined up with Trump's design Saturn in Gate 53, the Gate of Beginnings, line 4. Now, if you've watched my previous episodes, you'll recognize this as a sensitive placement for Trump, along with his design Mars in line 2 of the same gate. Every time he's gone off the rails and has had major pushback, even from his supporters, a planet has been aspecting these placements. Even though he did get plenty of pushback for his speech, many people view his speech as planting a seed for future election fraud accusations. This speech, falling on these unique outer planetary configurations, seems to suggest that we're easily flowing into this direction. However, the Pluto-Jupiter opposition in this chart gives me some hope that this bet will not work out as expected. On July the 21st, as the moon transitioned into Scorpio to create a T-square with Jupiter and Pluto, news broke that New Jersey's DMV software had accidentally enrolled about a few thousand non-citizens as registered voters, of which approximately 400 ended up voting in 2023 and 2024. These people were spread across parties and districts. Now, even though this software glitch happened in the last election in which Trump was declared the winner, this admission is sure to fuel the fire of these election fraud claims. As I mentioned in my previous video, Mercury is stationing direct at 16 degrees of Cancer on July the 23rd. This station happens to be directly on Trump's design Mars in this same 53 gate that I mentioned earlier. Meanwhile, transiting Mars has just transitioned into gate 45. Mars is joining Saturn in gate 21 to create this full money line channel, a channel Trump has in his own design chart. On July the 26th, Saturn will station retrograde on the cross of the unexpected. Meanwhile, the nodes have switched gates, with the north node moving into gate 30, creating the channel of recognition. Now, you'll know about these themes if you watched my previous episode. And if you haven't watched it, I would recommend you go back and watch that episode, because I explain a lot more about what these connections mean, especially as we are heading into the eclipse. Now, you can already see the volatility in the financial markets, and I would expect it to intensify as we head into this full moon. Lindsay Graham's memorial in Washington, D.C. happens the day before the full moon on July the 28th. When he died, he had just celebrated his 71st birthday, and he was about ready to experience his Jupiter return. He He was either a 2-4 or a 3-5 splenic manifester. But because of his strong network, I would bet that he was a 2-4. He was born on the cross of penetration, which is about having this unique ability to break down barriers. And he was often spoken about in this way. He was a gifted political operator and networker. I think Ra's description of this full moon cross is so perfect to describe the atmosphere around the president. And it really describes how Lindsay Graham himself closed ranks around him when previously he called him a disgrace to our country. And it really showcases Lindsay Graham's hypocritical nature and the hypocritical nature of so many people who used to say this about the president, who has since joined his coterie. So this is what Ra says about the 5-1 cross of the Alpha. Ah, sheep. How easy it is to say to all of them, oh, you're all so terrific. Here, it's so slimy. These are the Alpha's creatures. Alpha leadership is like a gangster movie where you see all the creatures around the gangster. Louis, you're the best killer I have. Then Louis would do anything for you. And it's so amazing how many human beings will accept any kind of role as long as they're praised. It's unbelievable. And if you watched my previous video, you will remember that I had initially thought his funeral was going to be last week on the Cross of Laws, which is Netanyahu's cross. And I thought the timing to be interesting since Netanyahu would be traveling to the States for his funeral. But if you know Netanyahu's chart, you'll see that his descendant is right on the midheaven here. And Lindsay Graham was a big supporter of Netanyahu. Lindsay has his Venus and South node straddling the midheaven of this chart, and he has his Jupiter Chiron opposition right on this full moon. This full moon is related to the new moon in Aquarius that happened on January the 29th of 2025, shortly after Trump took office. If you have planets in fixed signs between 2 and 10 degrees, you'll feel this full moon more personally, and you might want to think back on what was seeded in your life during that new moon. Something you started back then may be culminating right now. During that new moon, Mercury was separating from Pluto and applying to the new moon, and Jupiter was retrograde in Gemini in a trine relationship to the new moon. Now, since then, Jupiter has traveled through Cancer and has now joined the Sun in opposition to that new moon, while Mercury is in aversion or inconjunct in Cancer. This is what inversion or inconjunct mean. It means that the signs cannot see one another. They are in each other's blind spots. The signs don't quite get each other. Aquarius is detached, while Cancer is personal. There can be magic in this combination, but both signs need to adjust to the other's approach. Now, as we saw in the previous chart, we have a Jupiter-Pluto opposition on this full moon. And Jupiter and Pluto oppositions can sometimes be referred to as the gambler's curse. And wow, does this describe our current stock market right now, and especially our big bet on AI. As Korea's recent stock market crash demonstrated, this kind of over leverage in the market can be dangerous, and it's especially harmful for the average investor who has a lot less to play with. Goldman Sachs recently put out a stat that retail investors now make up 30% of the market. U.S. tech investments as a share of GDP has surpassed its 1990s peak, and spending plans from the largest cloud and computing companies for 2026 are nearly 50% higher than estimates from just 6 months ago, according to Goldman Sachs research. AI-related companies have added roughly $27 trillion in market value since late 2022. It's still possible to reconcile this market value with a macro estimate of future profit gains, but doing so requires Panglossian optimism, says this report. This full moon, located in Washington, D.C., sits in the 5th house, the gambling house, too. Jupiter expands everything it touches, including ego and risk tolerance. Pluto tempts people with power and massive returns. Combined, they trick investors, traders, and individuals into feeling completely invincible. Under this influence, people double down on high-risk speculative positions like crypto, options trading, leverage, high-stakes investments, or literal gambling, like the whole Kalshi and poly market craze. The curse aspect kicks in when optimism completely overrides risk management. Historically and mundanely, Jupiter-Pluto hard aspects mark periods of speculative bubbles followed by sudden market corrections, exposure of financial scandals, or abrupt falls from grace for major institutions and individual traders. Since we have Mars in Gemini in the 9th house of this chart, square Venus in the 12th house, the current escalation we are seeing in the Middle East could be the catalyst to a sudden, unforeseen shock that leads to this correction. The recent escalation has become increasingly risky and has the ability to completely destroy the world's economy. So it's not hard to imagine something like that happening, especially as we head into the solar eclipse in August. Mercury, the ruler of the ascendant and the midheaven, both at the critical 29th degree, is intercepted in the 10th house. This symbolizes the skipped conjunction I have been talking about between Mercury and Jupiter. We are at the end of an old cycle, but currently we're stuck between cycles, between abundance versus scarcity. Mercury, representative of the administration, cannot quite see the risks entailed in this full moon. There's a blind spot right now. And if you look at this full moon around the United States Sibley chart, this narrative really comes into focus. The full moon is on the 6th, 8th house axis, with Jupiter exactly conjunct the North Node. The United States has the channel of recognition in its chart natively, and it's made up of the South Node at 6 degrees of Aquarius in gate 41 and the moon at 27 degrees of Aquarius in gate 30. It's demonstrative of this innate drive in us toward innovation, toward reinventing ourselves periodically. And Pluto has been working its magic on this part of us. Pluto is applying to our South Node right now. We are meant to experience adversity, to struggle through these periods of innovative repurposing, to struggle through adversity, to find our new purpose, to advance, to innovate. And from an astrological perspective, it's interesting to ponder this mix of Aquarian and Cancerian energy in our nation's chart. Aquarius energy is not only symbolic of technology and innovation, but you could describe it as pro-communistic because of its egalitarian and communal nature. Perhaps this is where this deep-seated fear of communism comes from. The leader's Sun, Jupiter in Cancer cannot see the people or the moon in Aquarius or where we came from in our revolution, our past, where our roots are from, where our foundation is from, what gives us this innovative nature. We can't see these different parts of us as we've grown more like the leaders that we are today. We've forgotten our roots. And Venus is also conjunct our natal Neptune in this chart, and the United States is experiencing a Mars return on this full moon. So we are being initiated to accept a new vision for our future, with Neptune transiting gate 17 and connecting our natal Mercury in gate 62, forming this channel of acceptance. And Mars and Saturn are connecting this money line channel, reinforcing the destructive money themes that have been playing out as we have been experiencing our Saturn opposition. Now, it's interesting to note that Pete Hegseth's natal Venus retrograde sits on the midheaven of this full moon chart. And if you notice, he has a T-square between Venus in Gemini, Saturn in Virgo, and Neptune in Sagittarius, which is aspecting this Venus-Mars square in the full moon chart. And this T-square also aspects Donald Trump's Sun and nodes on the Gemini-Sagittarius axis. And you see that Pete Hegseth is one of Donald Trump's courtiers, and you see this symbiosis in this Venus square Saturn. It's the same nature as Donald Trump's Venus-Saturn conjunction in Cancer. They both have this craving for external approval. They're very focused on appearances. And Venus-Saturn hard aspects typically will describe a lack of nurturing as a child, and in their cases, specifically from their fathers. And then we have the new supreme leader of Iran. We haven't seen him, but we've heard from him. And his cabinet has said he's been increasingly engaged. He has a Venus-Moon conjunction in Leo aspecting this Sun-Jupiter conjunction in the full moon chart. He was born 3 days before a South Node solar eclipse in Virgo, with Mars square his nodal conjunction. This is creating a grand cross aspecting the Mars and Venus square. This war is perfectly descriptive of his nodal journey. A planet squaring the nodes is sometimes called a skipped step. He was only 10 years old when the 1979 revolution happened, and since then, he's lived in the shadow of his father. This skipped step activated when his father was murdered and he was voted as the next supreme leader. His father's murder was an act of fate that pushed him into this role that he might not otherwise have had. He's getting a chance to experience a different kind of revolution, one that he now must lead in his own unique way. You see that he has a Mercury-Jupiter conjunction in Libra in his chart, ruled by that Venus in Leo, which is in trine relationship. His Venus is on the Jupiter decan of Leo. It's about triumphing on the wheel of fortune. Right before he was born, Mercury and Jupiter perfected a conjunction, and then once again, right after he was born, as Mercury went retrograde. His natal Mercury and Jupiter conjunction are in the gate of depth, but Mercury is in the line of incommunicado. He likely has issues with anxiety. And Venus is up here in gate 33, the gate of privacy, right next to his moon in gate 31, the gate of influence. So this behind the scenes leadership is actually perfect for him. With Mars in Sagittarius, he has a fanatical conviction, and he is meant to take on this role to fight with conviction for the survival of his country and in solidarity with the Revolutionary Guard and his assembly of experts. But it's interesting to see the Leo signature in his chart in light of this gambler's curse aspect. Has Iran overplayed their hand? Or has the US? Notably, Trump himself has an out-of-bounds Pluto at 10 degrees Leo, which will likely ramp up his feelings of invincibility and could increase his risk tolerance to a dangerous level. Let's hope not. If we look at the upcoming August solar eclipse path, we see that the solar eclipse path goes over much of North America, as well as Greenland and into Spain. Whereas the last solar eclipse in February did reach the waterways as an entry point to the Strait of Hormuz. So hazard to say, based on this upcoming eclipse path, we are likely to feel it in North America much more intensely than they feel it in Iran, which is interesting since the war is happening in Iran. But that isn't to say that they're going to be successful. It just means that things are going to be happening in North America where we'll feel it here much more intensely. And it might be related to the war and it might not. But we will have surprises in store for us, and we shall find out very shortly. But remember, solar eclipses have windows of intensity on either side. So whatever happens on the solar eclipse doesn't mean it's a one and done thing. It's going to be felt intensely right before the eclipse and right after the eclipse. And there's a window. I'm actually going to put out a video that's specifically about the upcoming eclipse, so stay tuned. I hope this video was helpful in describing the full moon energies that we're already feeling and what this might mean for the wider world. As always, thank you for your feedback. I really appreciate it. These videos help me understand what's going on in the world, and I hope they help you. Okay, see you next time.